Each droplet slid down the glass like a tear tracing the edge of a forgotten memory. Elena stood motionless before the mirror, her reflection barely recognizable in the dim light of the bedside lamp. The exhaustion etched into her face was unmistakable. The silk nightgown clung to her slender figure, its elegance ill-fitting against the weight of her loneliness. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, deliberate, heavy, slicing through the oppressive silence of the room. Elena's heart skipped. She turned sharply, her breath caught in her throat. Theo. His tall frame appeared from the shadows, wet from the rain, his dark hair sticking to his forehead. His presence was almost spectral, silent and unnervingly calm. The chill of the storm outside seemed to follow him, wrapping the room in an uncomfortable stillness. "Elena," he said, his voice low and strained, as if he had just emerged from a storm, one he couldn't outrun. "I need to talk to you." Elena fought to steady her breath. "This late? Is something wrong?" Theo stepped closer, the flickering light catching his sharp features. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured, his eyes roaming over her before settling back on hers. "I've been thinking too much." The air in the room thickened, suffocating, as though the space itself was holding its breath. Elena instinctively took a step back, but her retreat was halted by the table pressing into her legs. "About what?" she asked, her voice sounding too small in the vast silence that had settled between them. Theo didn't answer immediately. His silence lingered, weighty, like a tidal pull threatening to drown her. He stared at her, his gaze cutting through the walls she had carefully built around herself. Her hands trembled, and she clenched them into fists to hide the tremor. "Have you ever thought—" His voice dropped lower, slower, laden with an intensity she couldn't ignore. "That sometimes people can't control how they feel, even when they know it's wrong?" Elena froze, his words striking her like an unexpected blow. She drew a shaky breath, trying to steady herself, but his gaze held her in place, unyielding. "Theo," she whispered, her voice catching. "What are you talking about?" The storm outside raged louder, a bolt of lightning illuminating the room for a brief moment. In that brief flash of light, she saw it, the truth she had been avoiding. No matter how much she denied it, the tension between them could no longer be ignored. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," Theo said, his voice steady, his certainty undeniable. Time seemed to stop. The only sound was the relentless patter of rain, like the frantic beat of her heart. Theo's gaze pierced her, pulling the very truth she had buried deep inside her heart to the surface. Elena took a step back, her mind racing. The room felt impossibly small, the air thick, constricting. She turned away from him, walking slowly toward the window, as though the rain could offer her some solace. But it didn't. Nothing could wash away the feeling of dread settling in her chest. "You shouldn't say things like that," she said, her voice barely a whisper, a quiet plea to end this conversation before it could go any further. Theo didn't move. He stood still, his presence looming in the shadows, as though anchoring her in place. "I can't not say it," he replied. His voice carried a quiet pain that caught her off guard. "Do you know what's been the hardest thing for me these past few days, Elena?" His eyes searched hers, almost pleading for her to understand. "It's this feeling, this pull, like I'm being drawn to something I shouldn't feel. The harder I try to avoid it, the more it drags me in." Elena's stomach churned. She had tried so hard to bury the feelings she had been struggling with for months, since that first night she had met him at Nathan's house. She remembered his cold indifference toward her, the unspoken distance between them. But that had changed. Slowly. And tonight, in the dimness of the storm, the truth was undeniable. Her mind raced back to that winter night when Theo had opened up to her for the first time, sharing the deep sadness he carried for his mother, the woman he had loved more than anyone in the world. He had been vulnerable with her in a way that no one else had, and for the first time, she had felt seen, understood. But what she hadn't realized then was the way those moments would blur the line between them. His voice broke through her thoughts. "You don't have to say anything, Elena. I know this is wrong, but you feel it too. We both do." She couldn't speak. She couldn't deny it. The truth was right there in the air between them, thick and undeniable. Theo stepped closer, and for a moment, Elena couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Every part of her screamed to step back, to put an end to it, but her feet were frozen in place. And then, before she could stop herself, he kissed her. It was soft, tentative, as if giving her the chance to pull away. But she didn't. She let the kiss consume her, the storm raging outside forgotten as the one inside her spiraled out of control. When they pulled away, Elena's mind was a blur of confusion and guilt. She stepped back, her fingers brushing her lips, still tingling from his touch. "We shouldn't," she began, her voice trembling, but she couldn't finish the thought. It was already too late. Theo didn't respond. He stood in the darkness, his eyes unreadable. The silence stretched between them, thick with all the things neither of them wanted to say. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the mansion, but it did nothing to lift the weight in Elena's chest. She sat at the breakfast table, staring blankly at her coffee, the storm of the night before still raging within her. Theo entered the kitchen. Elena didn't look up, but she felt his presence, his gaze heavy on her. "You don't have to avoid me," Theo said, his voice calm, unsettlingly so. "We both know what happened." Elena's heart pounded in her chest. "You think I can just pretend everything is fine?" she snapped. "You think this can just be forgotten?" Theo let out a short, bitter laugh. "No, but we both know it happened, and there's no going back." The sound of an engine approaching cut through the tension. Nathan was home early. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't ready to face him. Not now. Not like this. She shot a frantic glance at Theo, but he only stood there, unflinching. Nathan stepped into the room, his smile faltering as he sensed the heaviness in the air. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice wary. Before Elena could respond, Sarah entered behind him. Her eyes met Elena's, and Elena could feel it, a subtle understanding that everything was about to unravel. Nathan's gaze shifted between them, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "What's going on here?" Theo stepped forward, his voice cutting through the thick silence. "Do you want the truth, Dad?" he said, his tone firm. "It's time you started paying attention. You've been blind for too long." Elena's heart dropped. The secret was out. The line had been crossed. Nathan's face turned pale, his expression darkening as he turned to Theo. "What are you talking about?" The room grew colder, suffocating. Elena stood frozen, caught between two worlds, one that she had once known and one that was now slipping through her fingers, beyond her control. She had crossed the line, and now there was no going back.